When Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone in 2007, Chinese labor was remarkably inexpensive, costing around $1 per hour. This was less than labor costs in Thailand or the Philippines and a significant bargain compared to Malaysia. However, over the course of 15 years, wages have risen in most places, but China stands out. By the time the iPhone 14 was released last year, the cost of Chinese labor had surged from $1 to $8 per hour. Presently, for the price of 1 hour of Chinese labor, you can purchase 4.5 hours of labor in Mexico. The only major Latin American economy with a high labor cost is Chile. In a global context, made in China is no longer considered inexpensive. It could even be labeled as costly. To understand China's demographic backdrop, it's essential to go back a few decades. While many are familiar with China's one-child policy, the context that preceded it is crucial. Chairman Mao believed that having a large population would act as a strong deterrent against nuclear war. During his final visit to Moscow, he boasted about how his country could afford to lose 300 million people without much difficulty. As a result, he made children, also seen as a source of free-farm labor, particularly desirable in China, enshrining this incentive in law. People earned points based on their family size, which could be redeemed for food. This policy led to a significant population increase. Fast forward 30 years, and China's demographics grew almost exponentially. Mao's focus on strength in numbers and his baby boom policies were quite effective, leading to a large number of people in the 25 to 34 age group. This demographic has specific significance, and it's important to understand the implications of this demographic structure. Economically speaking, the generation that emerged in the early 2000s in China can be described as young, eager to work, and willing to accept low pay and less than ideal working conditions, making them ideal for mass-producing affordable consumer goods like toasters and t-shirts. This demographic culture, fueled by China's historical policies and migrations, was a product of China's transition and the unique demographic dividend it offered. Many of the individuals in this generation were originally born in rural areas, and they had to move towards the urban coastal regions to reap the benefits of industrialization. Between 1990 and 2010, about 10 million new migrants made this journey each year, ensuring a seemingly endless supply of labor. However, beneath these large numbers, China was experiencing a demographic transition similar to many other countries. In the initial stage, it was primarily an agricultural society, heavily reliant on manual labor for farming. In this context, having many children was advantageous as they provided free labor on the farm. Mortality rates were high, but fertility was even higher. As China progressed, mechanization reduced the need for manual labor in agriculture, freeing up time for advancements like antibiotics. Mortality rates decreased, but fertility remained high, leading to a boom in a number of children. Then, as more people moved to the cities, children, once considered assets, became more expensive to raise, leading to a decline in fertility rates. This transition created a demographic dividend characterized by a large working-age population, relatively few children and seniors, and the potential for rapid economic growth if these working-age adults could be productively employed. China seized this opportunity and rapidly modernized its economy. The unique aspect of China's situation is the speed at which this demographic dividend developed and is now declining. Before Mao's death in 1976, there was a push to expand the population, leading to a significant influx of baby boomers into the labor market. After Mao's death, the one-child policy was implemented, which curbed fertility rates. This means that today, China is experiencing a sudden reduction in the labor force as the younger generation has reached working age and the birth rate has declined. Remember those millions of extra 25 to 34-year-olds from 2000? They're now, on average, around 53 years old and approaching retirement. What was once a demographic dividend for the economy has turned into a deficit. Currently, China is likely at its youngest point in our lifetimes. In the next 70 years, you can expect China's total population to decrease by about 40%. China's rate of urbanization also has limits, as it can only reach 100%. China is approaching what economists call the Lewis turning point. The total number of Chinese workers peaked in 2015 and has been declining every year since, with one exception. So what does this mean for companies that depend on the vanishing labor force in China? They can fall into one of 4 categories. 1. If China is their primary market, they might choose to stay. 2. If they don't require skilled labor, many companies have already left China. Moving to places like Mexico, especially given its proximity to American consumers, can be more cost-effective. For example, only 21% of Nike footwear is still manufactured in China. 3. Companies that haven't left value more than just cost. They might appreciate China's enormous workforce and flexibility. These companies are likely to diversify their manufacturing by opening factories in countries like Vietnam or India, but will not leave China entirely. 4. Companies that need the manufacturing volume and expertise that you can only find in the factory of the world. Apple falls in this category. It is trying to leave China, but it hasn't found an alternative yet, maybe because there is not one yet. China offers an extensive infrastructure that includes well-developed roads, ports, and bridges. Chinese cities have made significant efforts to attract businesses because local bureaucrats' careers depended on their ability to do so. These companies have been enduring difficulties such as lockdowns, protests, and travel restrictions, which indicate that they can't easily escape from China. Despite a declining labor force, China's consumer market remains vast and relatively untapped. Companies like Starbucks, Walmart, and McDonald's are likely to expand rather than shrink in the country for the foreseeable future. As for China as a country, the large working-age population once kept labor costs low and fueled foreign investment. But as the population decreases, so does foreign investment. This leaves China in a challenging situation. Labor is too expensive to be competitive on the low end, yet not skilled enough to compete at the high end. This situation is known as the middle income trap, and the solution lies in education. Higher skills lead to higher wages, and those higher wages are spent on consumer goods, effectively replacing lost investment. China has made significant investments in education to address these challenges. Between 2000 and 2015, China experienced a tripling in college enrollment. The Gaokao, or the college entrance exam, is not just a test, but an identity-defining moment for Chinese students. The competition for after-school tutoring became so intense that the government had to intervene. Education could be considered China's unofficial state religion. However, the issue lies not in a shortage of education, but in its uneven distribution. While a small minority receives excellent education, the majority lags behind. China produces numerous bachelor's, graduate, and professional degrees, but around 70% of the population lacks even a high school education. What China truly needs is a middle ground of education. Even so-called low-skill factory jobs now require skills that individuals without a high school diploma may lack. While there are white-collar tech jobs, they are limited in number, and many graduates are unwilling to take on what they consider menial work. This mismatch in the labor force results in high unemployment, with the youth unemployment rate reaching nearly 20% in recent years. China has attempted to address these challenges since at least 2007, when the shift towards a consumption-driven economy was announced. However, little progress has been made as a Chinese household consumption as a share of GDP remains almost half that of the US or UK. In the past, there were widespread expectations of China's continued rise, similar to the anxious portrayals of the Japanese economy in the 1980s. Underlying these narratives was an assumption that China's demographic golden age would last indefinitely, somehow avoiding the challenges faced by other countries. However, addressing these issues is incredibly complex. Mere investments in vocational schools is insufficient. The stigma surrounding them must be reversed. Encouraging couples to have more children is not enough. Affordable childcare must be made available. And increasing consumption alone will not suffice. Root causes like unaffordable housing need to be tackled. Only a small number of countries had managed to escape the middle-income trap. China's future might be more realistically compared to Japan, still a significant and influential economy, but constrained by fundamental challenges such as declining birth rate. But there is hope. If China's engineering sector is able to consolidate the country as the factory of the world and use their innovation of the world to achieve an efficient and automated economy, this could help with the sustainability of an old population.